Alright, y'all, how you going? Welcome back to the video. We're looking at Welcome to Tasmania. Is it really that bad? That's the title of this video. This comes to us from a channel called Welcome To. It will be linked in the description down below so you can watch the whole thing uninterrupted and definitely browse their channel. This should be pretty fun, honestly, because basically I think they're going to be like interviewing people in the street and seeing what they think of Tasmania. This has been a really funny thing to learn about. Because of course I know as an American, about like interstate, rivalries. Certain states are best friends, other states are enemies, and not even that, just poking fun at different areas, different regions, different states, that kind of thing. I think that's synonymous with a lot of places. And it's been pretty interesting on this channel over the last couple of years. I've really learned a lot about that some people love Tasmania, some people don't like it the best. Some people really rip on it, right? It is the butt of a lot of jokes. It's forgotten on certain maps. But I tell you what, from what I've seen, it looks like absolutely a spectacular place. Great scenery. It's really interesting because it's an island state. I think there's a lot going for it, but it's also just a lot different. But is it really that bad? Remember, that's the question we're hoping to answer here. So let's go ahead and check this out, and makes it to see what the people say in here, and of course, anxious to see what y'all have to say down in the comments below. Let's take a look.
Time moves a little bit slower in Tasmania, and that's the way they like
Hobart.
it. Tasmania occasionally gets forgotten on official maps, and it's the butt of the joke for a lot of Australians.
Yeah.
So I decided to fly down to Tasmania to find out what it's really like and talk to some of the locals.
Looks pretty cool from
Since I got
those
here,
shots.
I've heard a few Tasmanians refer to the rest of Australia as the mainland.
Yeah.
Is there a rivalry there?
Yeah, definitely. Tassie gets forgotten because it's just so small down here.
I wouldn't say a rivalry. The mainland's just better.
I was laughed at on the mainland for calling it the mainland. It's not something that people who aren't from Tasmania call it, but it is a thing. And I got teased a lot for having two heads.
I've heard people
Two heads. I've heard that one a lot. I have to say, I'm way over here in America, and just from my videos and comments and little forum posts and whatnot, I have heard quite a bit the told Tasmania two heads thing. Pops up quite a bit. It is pretty funny to think that they call it the mainland, but then again, that makes sense, right? They live on an island. Their everyday experience, when they hop in a car and drive around, there's only a set number of places they can go. I mean, they're literally on an island. They can't just drive up to Sydney or, drive out to the desert or the outback. I mean, everything is just a slightly different thought process, right? But you can't really blame them for that, although it just would be funny for how many millions of people live on mainland Australia. And it's a pretty big place. Living in Tasmania is still living in Australia, but it's quite a different experience, to be fair. So
argue that it's a completely different place. It's really not. We all have the same currency, speak the same language, we're all the same people.
Australia.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
Yeah,
there's
it's
always
Australia,
separation
right?
between sort of a mainland and a hinterland. People on Bruny Island refer to Tasmania as the mainland. Australia is an island itself.
I think mostly it's good-natured ribbing just because we are so separated from the mainland, and so we've got to do something.
Nah, there ain't no rivalry. Most of the Tasmanians you'll find move up to the Gold Coast or some hotter places just because it's way better up there. Way more heat. I like cold, so I'm going to stay here.
Do you like living?
now that's what's interesting, man. Like, I give respect to anyone. I know everyone's different. Some people really do like the cold. I know that's common here for some people in the U.S. like the cold, and that's why a lot of northern states do have people. I don't. I don't get it. Like, I like the heat. Heat doesn't scare me. Give me hot all year round. That's what I wish I had, So I don't doubt for a second that a lot of people from Tasmania would, of course, go on holiday or vacation up, north in this case, in Australia, up to Gold Coast or whatever for some nice sunshine and hot weather. And yet some people choose to live there or might be from mainland Australia and move down there for, the scenery, the mountains, the cold. They might like that. And to add to that rivalry thing, like I said in the beginning, it's all kind of in just good fun. I don't think there's an actual rivalry. a heated rivalry or anything between Tasmania and the rest of Australia. I think it is just poking fun. You know, I know there's sports rivalries and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's all just good banter.
Living here, what are the pros and cons?
Absolutely love living here. I think there's amazing food, bars, coffee. I've always said if there's good beer and good coffee, I'm happy in a place, and Tasmania's stacked. So
I think Tasmania
good way to look at it.
Genuinely beautiful. I think it's incredible here, and I don't think I'd want to really live anywhere else.
It's all right. It gets a bit boring. Bogans get a bit much sometimes. You know how they be, but other than that, it's just as good as any other place. It's cold, and that's how I like it.
Yeah, I like living here. I like this.
Yeah, I figured a lot of people will mention like the scenery, like the landscape there is just gorgeous. They do have a lot to offer there that you wouldn't find in a lot of places, even in mainland Australia. Some of the video footage and photos I've seen from Tasmania have just been spectacular. And someone who does love beautiful natural landscapes when it comes to like mountains and even just the concept of being on an island, I think is really interesting to me as someone who definitely does not live on an island. I think Tasmania seems fascinating to me, and it does look spectacular.
The scenery and like the landscape and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like everyone, you go down to town, you see people you know, you can always stop and have a conversation while you're out and doing your business.
Yeah, I enjoy living here. Pros is it's pretty laid back and casual, but the cons is there's not as many opportunities as you'd find in bigger places.
I love it here. I reckon
That's
the
true.
con's probably the weather. It's too bipolar for me. It's all over the place. Like last week we had nice weather, then this week it's pretty bad.
There's a lot to do, and the scenery's beautiful, and the people are nice.
Yeah, the rain gets to it. I was having a good day until it started raining. The weather's very unpredictable, so.
I love living in Tasmania.
Do they get a lot of rain there? Do they get snow and rain in Tasmania often? Is that like just part of how it is there, or is it just certain seasons for just a couple months or something? I would love to hear that. I've heard a lot about weather over the years, but I'd love to hear from locals, like in the comments, you know, your experience rather than just looking on Google or something. And I do wonder about like the food scene too. A lot of people on and off throughout the video have been mentioning, you know, like good cafes, good food, good coffee, right? Like, how is that in Tasmania? It sounds actually pretty interesting. I bet the food is awesome. And you would almost hope so, because I guess the one downside is you're a little more stuck there, right? You know, of course you can travel to mainland when you have time and resources to do so, but it's not like an everyday thing, of course. So if the food's not good in your area down there, it's maybe not as flexible as some other places where you can drive out to somewhere a little, you know, half an hour away in a bigger landmass where you might have different towns and suburbs and stuff that have, you know, better food or whatever. So
Tasmania. As part of my job, I travel all around the world, and I always enjoy coming home, and I really appreciate it because I've seen so much of the world.
Yeah, I love living here. Everything's pretty close. Beach, mountains, snowboarding.
True.
Bike riding. You can do everything sort of within an hour.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, that goes for a lot of places, especially in Australia, but Tasmania has a unique spin on it. Lots of outdoor lifestyle, outdoor everything, right? It looks like a great place for that. All within a very reasonable distance.
Tasmania, they say it's the best state in Australia. But a lot of Aussies that haven't been here say it's the worst state in Australia. Why do you think people get this idea about Tassie?
I don't know. I think it's a tough one. There are certainly problems in Tasmania. There's not. There are issues in terms of the health system here. We've got a lot of pressure on our aged care services. There are a lot of issues that we have to grapple with. But on the upside, it's actually starting to become a massive destination tourism-wise.
Yeah.
There is a lot of economic development here. So I think in the next few years, we'll start to see more and more of those mainlanders who maybe previously might have joked about the place think, actually, I can afford to live in Tasmania much more than I can afford to live in Sydney or Melbourne.
Ooh, yeah.
I think it's because...
Yeah, I forgot to mention that during my last break here. Yeah, someone mentioned that opportunities might be a little less, and that's because obviously that differs. Like, you know, obviously you're not going to be able to find as huge of a job market and specialty jobs and high-paying jobs in Hobart or lots of places in Tasmania as you would maybe in Sydney or Melbourne or other big cities. Right? Like, of course, bigger cities are going to have bigger markets for things, but the cost of living, I should have asked that earlier. I didn't even think of that. How is the cost of living and housing prices and all this in Tasmania? I'm going to assume that, yes, you can't find as many jobs and as many specialty high-paying jobs and all these things. But I'm sure they have some sort of industries there. I'm sure they have some capacity of, tech jobs and government jobs and construction and all these things, right? It just is on a smaller scale. And, one of the nice things would be, well, I'm sure the cost of living is a lot lower than Sydney. We've all heard, even me as an American, I've heard and covered how expensive Sydney is. It's very expensive, right? Melbourne, too. Melbourne, I believe, is very expensive. I'm sure Gold Coast isn't cheap, right? So one of the good things I imagine would be if you can swing getting a good job lined up, or, maybe you're self-employed somehow or work online or whatever. If you have a decent job, I'm sure living in Tasmania isn't too bad on the expenses like it would be in some other bigger cities. So that's a plus for sure.
Because we are separated, and because people have to really make an effort to come down here and to do stuff, I think it's pretty easy to not like us.
Maybe some things would be worse, though. What about, goods? Would they be a little more expensive if they have to ship everything down there and stuff?
Also, we have some real off politicians like Jackie Lambie from here, so...
I'm guessing because of up on the mainland, there's so much more to do. You got parks in Melbourne you can go to, you got parks in Queensland you can go to, there's better beaches, there's...
Oh, yeah.
You can meet a new person every day and not see them ever again kind of thing. Whereas
Yeah.
down here I could bump into you and see you 3 weeks later and it's easy as.
Probably because we're built on...
That's a good point.
More convicts were sent here than anywhere else in Australia. Port Arthur, there's a lot, so they think that we're more hardened criminals and shenanigans, pretty much.
I think it has a reputation because of being a little bit behind the times. What's interesting is that now that's actually an appeal for people, and tourists are attracted to its antiquated charm.
It's just the mainland has more stuff. Tassie is probably nicer people and more friendly people, but the mainland just has more entertaining things to do.
Right.
Does it bother you when Tasmania gets left off the map, or you don't really care?
I'm actually a cartographer, so I just chuckle about it.
I'm not too fussed about
nice.
it.
I don't personally care, and I don't know anyone who does. It's more of a laughing point than anything else.
It doesn't.
I was going to say, I bet people wouldn't get offended. They'd probably just laugh and scoff wow, another map we're not on, as if we're not here, I'm sure it's not a huge deal, but they're just shocked and what the hell is this about, right?
Legitimately bother me, but if it happened, I'd probably make a fuss just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
I don't mind. Sometimes it's nice having less people down here, so if they sort of forget about us, it's good.
I kind of like it because it keeps other people away.
You don't want people to come here?
No, not really, because then
It brings us
starts
money.
But it starts rubbish that we don't
Yeah.
need.
It does actually.
That's actually a funny thing, right? But yeah, there are some states in the U.S., obviously, with 50 states, you're going to have this type of talk a lot, where certain places are famous and get all the recognition, and other places are actually really cool and really hidden gems, and just seem to get passed over, or some people don't know that they're even a state, or all these things. Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. And you kind of run that question in your head, well, as social media gets bigger and the internet and stuff, certain hidden gems kind of come to the surface a little bit. Honestly, I'll give an example, not with any crazy exact numbers or anything, but basically 20 years ago, not many people, and by people I mean Americans, right? In our own country here. No one really cared about or knew much about Idaho as a whole, the state of Idaho, especially Boise, the capital and the most popular city, right? And somehow over the next 20 years, especially the last 7 years, the place has literally exploded in popularity and growth. And now they've dealt with 50 years of growth in a matter of 5 years. And a lot of the locals that grew up there and were used to a really nice city with a cheap cost of living and, beautiful mountains and all these things, now all of a sudden they don't have it to themselves. They have what seems like 1 million people around at all time. And cost of living went through the roof. Their housing market went on fire, and everything's super expensive there now. And it literally wasn't 15 years ago. It's that thing. It's it's kind of nice to get some recognition, and people are finally seeing how awesome this place is. But then when you take these places and they do get popular, it ends up kind of taking away that innocence or that that small time charm where it's like, ooh, this is a beautiful place and it's not crowded and there's not much traffic and stuff. And it kind of ruins it or scrambles it, and then everything gets more expensive and stuff. So it's a weird thing. Like, you want places to get recognition, and of course, you know, a little tourism and tourism dollars and stuff you would think doesn't hurt. But where's that fine line where you want a little more of that but not ruin the place, so to say, right? It's just kind of an interesting thing people always talk about with places, and I assume Tasmania is like that. I think a lot of people sleep on it. A lot of people don't know maybe how awesome it is. But at the same time, I imagine Tasmania locals wouldn't want influx of millions of people there. That would just be kind of unrealistic, right? But hey, we're going to end it there. There is actually a whole half of this video left, so make sure to go over to their channel, use that link in the description, and check out this whole video and check their stuff out. That was pretty fun. I really, of course, it's going to be an amazing video for comments, so I can't wait to see what you guys have to say down below. Do you like Tasmania? And if you don't like it, if you're not the biggest fan of Tasmania, you know, why is it? What are some of the reasons or negative things about the state that you found? And if you do love it, you know, why are some reasons you do love it? And do you know anyone that lived in mainland Australia or perhaps somewhere else? Maybe they lived in New Zealand, maybe they lived in a different country, and they moved to Australia and they moved to Tasmania specifically. That would be interesting to hear. But to wrap it up, you know, my opinion, of course, I haven't been there, but I would love to go there. And the more I've learned about it, the more I've really thought it does look like a beautiful place. It's definitely a place I would love to see. And I think there's a lot of charm and advantages it would have compared to a lot of other states and territories. I think it's a really interesting place and definitely unique. And is it really that bad? No, I don't think it's really that bad from what I've learned. Either way, guys, throw a like on there if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to be part of this amazing community we do have here. And that's about it for this one, y'all. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker, and until next time, I'll catch you later.